The nurse who finds love amid tragedy chaos was everywhere. The metallic smell of blood and the distant sound of sirens filled the air as I ran between the makeshift beds in the hospital set up in the school gym. The fluorescent light flickered, reflecting the agitation and urgency of the moment. I was a nurse, but in that moment, I was also a pillar of strength for those who could barely breathe. Every face that passed by me told a story of pain, and I tried with all my strength to listen and offer a little comfort. "Rachel, we need more bandages here," shouted a fellow nurse, her voice cutting through the maelstrom. "I'm on my way," I replied, adjusting the mask over my face and running towards the supply table. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't allow myself to weaken. Training told me I needed to be the rock in the storm. As I collected the materials, an image of one of the patients stood out to me. A man, sitting on the floor, with empty eyes, looking for someone. His look was lost and desolate, and this scene hit me like a punch in the stomach. "Are you okay?" I asked, approaching him. He seemed so out of it, a lifeless body in the chaos. "My wife, where is my wife?" he stammered, his voice cracking with pain. I could see the internal struggle in his eyes, as if he were fighting the waves of a rough sea. "Let's find her. I need you to tell me her name," I begged, trying to stay calm. He stared at me, as if he was trying to process the reality around him. "Her name is Clara. We were on our way to a trip." He started to cry, and my heart broke seeing that man so broken. What could I do to ease the pain he felt? I needed to be strong, but his strength was fading. "David, let's take care of this. You need to sit down and breathe," I suggested, guiding him to a nearby bench. He seemed so lost, so distant. I sat next to him, feeling the weight of sadness that enveloped him. The silence between us was deafening. "She can't be, this can't have happened," he murmured, his voice so low I almost couldn't hear it. The pain in his words resonated with me like an echo. What could I say? I knew nothing I said could ease the pain he felt. "David, I'm sorry. I'll do my best to help you. But please, we need to know where Clara is," I insisted, holding his hand. He looked at me, and for a brief moment, our souls connected in the darkness. It wasn't just his pain that I felt, but also an inexplicable connection, an invisible thread that tied us together in that moment of tragedy. The hours passed, and as the makeshift hospital tried to organize itself, I couldn't get David out of my mind. He was a broken man, but there was something so human about him that called to me. I knew the pain he carried was immense, but I also felt there was a spark of hope waiting to be lit. "Rachel," he called, and the way he said my name sounded like a cry for help. "Do you think I can handle this? Losing her?" "I don't know, David, but you don't have to go through this alone," I replied, hoping my words were a balm for his soul. "Allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to cry. That's part of the process." He shook his head, but the weight of pain was still visible in his eyes. What could I do to help him open up? What could I do to let him know that life didn't end there? As the shadows of night began to lengthen, I realized that David's battle had become mine, and I was willing to fight alongside him, even if the journey was long and full of challenges. The atmosphere was charged when I arrived at David's house. The gray sky seemed to reflect the pain he carried within him. The door was ajar, and upon entering, I was enveloped by a heavy, almost palpable silence. Every step I took echoed, breaking the gloomy stillness of that place. I knew he was dealing with his grief, but I didn't realize how devastating it could be. "David," I called, my voice soft, almost like a whisper. He appeared in the room, his eyes deep and tired, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. There was a mixture of surprise and fear in his eyes. "I thought I could visit you and see how you are, Rachel." He hesitated, his voice shaking. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why not? I just want to help you," I replied, trying to convey as much comfort as possible. I could see the internal struggle he faced, and my heart ached for him. He was surrounded by mementos of his wife. Photos on the bookshelf, a cup of coffee still on the table, as if she were just gone for a moment. "She's everywhere," David muttered, looking around the room. "I can't escape this." "I understand," I said, approaching him. But you don't have to face this alone. I'm here. He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he was going to open up. But soon his gaze fell away, as if he were withdrawing into a shell. It's hard, Rachel. I don't know if I want to talk about this. If you don't want to talk about your wife, we can talk about anything else. How was your day? What do you like to do? I tried to change the subject, but I knew it was a futile attempt. He was trapped in his pain. There's no way around it, he said, frustration showing in his voice. I lost her, and it's like I lost myself. Those words cut me. I wanted so badly to help him, but what could I do? David, you don't need to forget her. The love you had for her will never disappear. I know that, but it stops me from moving forward, he replied, his voice breaking. And I don't want to hurt you. You're not hurting me, I said, firmly. I'm here because I care about you. You don't have to be stuck in this cycle of pain. We can find a way to deal with this together. He took a deep breath, as if preparing to share something profound. You know, sometimes I catch myself remembering happy times with her. The way she smiled when I surprised her with flowers, or the nights we would just watch movies, laughing at silly things. These moments are important, I said, encouraging him to continue. Go on, David. Talk about her. It was all so perfect, he said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. She was my best friend, my love. And now I feel like I have nothing. You still have your memories. They're part of who you are. And I'm here to help you honor them, if you'll let me, I said, feeling the emotion welling up inside me. I wanted him to see that there was still light in his life, even if it was shrouded in shadow. He looked at me, and for a moment, there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. But what if I open up and then hurt myself even more? It's a risk, David, but so is living. As painful as it is, living is experiencing love and loss. You don't need to deprive yourself of feeling, I said, feeling the urgency to help him see that love was not a betrayal of his wife's memory. David walked away, the struggle in his heart evident. I don't know if I can. Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying her memory by thinking about moving on. Look at me, I asked, holding his chin gently so he met my gaze. Loving again doesn't mean forgetting. It's just a new chapter. You can honor what you had and still allow life to continue. He closed his eyes, and I saw the internal struggle he was facing. The tension between the desire to open up and the fear of being hurt again was palpable. I committed to not giving up on him. I knew that if I wanted to, I could help him find a path to healing, even if it took time. The day of the ceremony to honor the victims of the train accident had arrived. The sky was gray, as if the universe itself was in mourning. I had organized everything very carefully, trying to balance sadness and hope, but all my mind could think about was David. How would he react to that? Would he come? The weight of uncertainty accompanied me as I prepared the space in the park, surrounded by white flowers and lit candles that danced in the wind. When I saw David approach, my heart skipped a beat. He was dressed simply, but there was something about his posture that showed he was fighting his own demons. "Hi, David," he said, trying to smile to ease the tension. He looked at me, his expression a mix of gratitude and pain. "Hi, Rachel. I don't know if I should be here." "I understand," I replied, taking a step forward. "But this is an opportunity for us to honor those we've lost. You don't have to go through this alone." He hesitated, but finally nodded. "I'll stay. For her." The ceremony began with soft music playing in the background. The people who were present shared stories, laughter and tears, and I felt a mix of feelings. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath. We are here today to remember the lives that were tragically cut short, to honor the love these people left in our hearts. I looked at David, who was standing with his head down but his eyes fixed on me. No one should face pain alone. It's important that we find support, even in the most difficult times. After I spoke, David approached me, hesitantly. "Rachel, can I talk for a bit?" He looked so vulnerable, so lost. "Of course, David. I'm here to listen to you." Eyes shining with emotion, he began. "The pain never seems to go away. I miss it every day. Sometimes it feels like I'm trapped in a nightmare that I can't wake up from. I can't imagine what you're going through," I said softly, but it's normal to feel this pain. Grief is a complicated process. He took a deep breath, as if trying to gather his courage. She was my life. We had plans, dreams. Everything was ripped away from me in an instant. His voice cracked, and I could see the tears streaming down his face. David, it's okay to feel this way. You don't need to be ashamed of your pain. It's a part of who you are now, I replied, trying to comfort him. He looked into my eyes, and for the first time, I saw a spark of vulnerability. But what if I forget? What if I start to move on and leave her behind? The concern in his voice was palpable. You won't forget. The love you felt for her will always be a part of you. But that doesn't mean you can't find happiness again. Love doesn't diminish what you had. On the contrary, it can expand your heart, I said, feeling the need for him to understand. He nodded slowly, as if he was processing my words. I want to believe that, Rachel. I really want to. The ceremony continued, and as people lit candles in memory, David and I remained together, in silence, sharing that moment. The weight of her pain didn't disappear, but there was something light in the air, a possibility of hope. After the ceremony, David thanked me. Thank you for being here, for listening to me. I don't know how you do it. I smiled, a little relieved. I just want you to know you're not alone. I'm here for you. He smiled back, a shy but genuine smile. It means more than you know. There, in that park, among flowers and candles, a small step was taken. David was starting to open up, and I felt like the walls around his heart were starting to come apart. The journey would be long, but somehow I knew that together we could face the pain and, perhaps, find a new path to happiness. The weeks following the ceremony, honoring the accident victims, brought a new dynamic for David and me. Grief still danced around us, but there was a delicate thread of hope weaving through our conversations. We started meeting more frequently, and with each meeting, I felt like we were building something that transcends the pain. One afternoon, while we were having coffee in a small bistro, I decided to share a little of my own world. I looked at David, who seemed lost in thought, and took a deep breath. You know, I also went through difficult times. When I was younger, I lost my mother. It was a very dark phase in my life, I confessed, attracting his attention. He looked at me with curiosity and a touch of empathy. How did you handle it? He asked, leaning forward slightly. It was complicated. At first, I just wanted to forget. But over time, I realized that the pain doesn't go away. We learn to carry it, to live with it. What helped me was opening up to the people around me, create connections, changing the focus from my suffering to the love I still had in my life, even if in other places, I explained, trying to convey the hope I had found. David was silent for a moment, his eyes lost in his coffee cup, as if he was considering my words. I don't know if I can do this. Sometimes I feel that by opening up, I am dishonoring my wife's memory, he said, the pain still reflected in his gaze. I understand, David, but loving again doesn't mean forgetting. You can honor her in many ways. She would like you to be happy, don't you think? I wanted him to see that life still had a lot to offer, even with his absence. He took a deep breath, seeming more relaxed. Maybe you're right. It's so hard. I feel guilty for even thinking about moving on. There was a fragility in his voice that made me want to hold him, but I held back, respecting his space. I'm not here to rush anything, and you don't need to decide anything right now. But I'm here, and I care about you. Let's just continue to get to know each other. Explore this connection we have, I said, realizing I was starting to open up to him too. The conversation flowed, and as we talked about our childhoods, our dreams and fears, the atmosphere around us seemed to change. David started to smile more, and I realized I was falling in love with him. Or maybe he already was, but was afraid to admit it. Meanwhile, a flashback invaded David's mind. He fixed his gaze on a distant point, and I watched him, intrigued. I remember one day my wife and I were in the park. It was a sunny day. We talked about the future, about our dreams. She wanted to travel the world, see the northern lights. He always told me that love was an adventure and that we should enjoy every moment. His vision was so vivid, I could almost see the scene unfolding. She once said that if I ever felt lost, I should remember that love doesn't end, it transforms. I didn't know I would have to deal with this so soon, he concluded, sadness filling his eyes again. It's a beautiful memory, David. Love truly transforms, and you can carry it with you, like a light, I said, not knowing if my words were reaching him. He looked at me, and for a moment, I could feel there was a spark of understanding. But soon fear took over again. What if I don't make it? What if I try and end up disappointed again? His vulnerability was palpable, and I wanted to comfort him, but I didn't know how. There are no guarantees in life, but every step is an opportunity. You don't need to have all the answers now. Let's try together, without rushing. What do you think? I hoped he sensed the truth in my words. David hesitated, the internal struggle visible on his face. I want to believe, but what if I forget about her? That scares me, he confessed. You won't forget. She will be part of you forever. What I'm saying is that you can create new space for another love in your life. It doesn't have to be a choice between one or the other, I said, trying to convey the depth of what I felt. He looked into my eyes for what seemed like forever, and I knew we were at a turning point. The words were there, floating between us like unspoken promises. The future was still uncertain, but there was a path forming, and I wanted David to walk it with me. The morning sun streamed through the car window as I drove toward the destination that would mark a new chapter in David's life and mine. The air was filled with a mix of anticipation and nervousness, and I couldn't help but glance every now and then at David, who was standing next to me, lost in thought. The idea of us revisiting a place that meant so much to him and his wife was both exciting and terrifying. "Are you okay?" I asked, breaking the silence that stretched between us like a veil. He took a deep breath, looking out the window where the trees passed by in a blur of green. "I'm just thinking." "On something specific?" I was curious, wishing he would open up a little more. "The last time I was here with her, it was a beautiful day, just like today. We laughed a lot." The sadness in his voice was palpable, and part of me wanted to comfort him, but another part hesitated, afraid that any word might be a mistake. "It's good to have those memories, David. They're part of who you are." I said this with the hope that he would feel like he was not alone in his pain. He turned to me, his eyes a little brighter. "I know, but it's hard. Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying her memory by allowing myself to smile again." I agreed, knowing this was a dilemma many faced after a loss. "But you're not cheating at all. You're simply living. And that doesn't take away from what she meant to you." David gave me a thoughtful look, as if evaluating my words. "Do you really believe that?" "Yes, I do. Life goes on, even when we don't want it to. And you deserve to be happy, David." He nodded slowly, as if he was beginning to understand. The rest of the trip was filled with a more comfortable silence, and I felt hopeful that we were heading in the right direction. When we arrived at the lake, a feeling of nostalgia came over him. The waters reflected the blue sky, and I could tell David was taking in every detail. "This is where we used to spend our weekends." "She loved fishing," he said, with a nostalgic smile. "Shall we go fishing then?" I suggested, trying to bring some levity to the situation. "Fishing? I haven't fished in years," he replied, but the idea seemed to light a small spark of joy in his eyes. "Come on, it could be fun." I insisted, and soon we were assembling the fishing rod, laughing as we tried to remember how to do everything correctly. Time passed almost magically, and with each laugh shared, I saw David loosen up a little more. He was starting to relax, and when we finally sat down by the lake, the sun starting to set, the atmosphere was filled with a light, hopeful energy. "Rachel, David began, his voice shaking. I looked at him, feeling like something important was about to be said. "Yes?" I encouraged, my heart racing. "I feel something for you. Something I never thought I'd feel again. But at the same time, I'm scared. Scared of forgetting, scared of getting hurt," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice cutting me deep. "David, you don't need to feel guilty about this. Loving doesn't mean forgetting. You will always have room for your wife in your heart, and that doesn't change what we're building here," I replied, trying to convey to him the truth that I felt. He turned completely towards me, and I saw a mixture of pain and hope in his eyes. "I want to try. I want to believe that I can be happy again. And in that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. The past was there, but the future also offered itself. Then let's try it together, I whispered, feeling a surge of emotion. Let's find out what that means. Our gazes met, and for a brief moment, the world around us disappeared. The connection between us was undeniable, and on that lake, under the blazing evening sky, I felt like we were ready to take an important step. As soon as I returned from the trip, a feeling of lightness hovered in the air. But the truth is that the weight of the past was still with me. David seemed more open, more willing to let the light into his heart, but I knew there was still a way to go. He walked away to take a break, and in a lonely moment, I began to wonder if I had done the right thing by encouraging him to move on. One sunny afternoon, I received a call from David. "Hi, Rachel. Can I stop by for a moment?" he asked, his voice shaky and hesitant. The heart raced. "Of course, David. I'm home," I replied quickly, trying to hide the anxiety that was building up inside me. When he arrived, he had a look on his face that mixed confusion and determination. He entered, still holding what appeared to be a yellowed letter with frayed edges. "I found this in my closet," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a letter from my wife." I felt a tightness in my chest. He was about to open a new wound. "Can I read it?" I asked, trying to be supportive, but also knowing that pain can be a path to healing. David nodded, still holding the letter in shaking hands. He unrolled it, and I began to hear his words, which seemed to float in the air like an echo from the past. "My love, if you're reading this, it is because I am no longer here. I want you to know that my greatest happiness was seeing you happy. Don't dwell on grief. Live your life and find joy again. I will always love you, but you need to move on." As he read, tears streamed down his face. The pain was palpable, but there was something more. A kind of liberation began to emerge. When he finished reading, he was silent for a moment, processing each word. "She wanted me to be happy, Rachel," he said, his voice breaking. "I guess this means I can try to love again." "Yes, David, you can. And love doesn't take away from what you had. It's just a new way of living," I replied, trying to be the anchor he needed. Looking into his eyes, I saw a mixture of fear and hope. And suddenly, everything changed. He approached. "Rachel, I have feelings for you. Something real. And that scares me," he confessed, his voice choked and full of emotion. "I don't know how to deal with this. It's like I'm betraying her memory." "You're not cheating on anyone, David. You are allowing yourself to be happy again. This is a gift, both for you and for her," I said, sincerely. With a tentative movement, he took my hand and held it, as if seeking strength. "I don't want this to end. I don't want to lose you too." "Then let's figure it out together," I suggested, as a wave of emotion washed over me. He leaned forward, and our lips met in a soft, tentative kiss. It was a mixture of pain and hope, of love and memory. When we parted, I looked into his eyes and said, "Let's honor the past, but also live in the present. I want to be by your side, David." He smiled, a smile that lit up not only his face but also my soul. From that day on, we began to build a new chapter in our lives, one where pain and love coexisted, but where hope prevailed. Every moment together was a promise of a future we didn't yet know, but were ready to explore. And so, with an open heart, we begin to heal, one day at a time.